On his left foot was standing. Pelé! What a save! Short back.
The following words were written shortly after the 1973-1974 season came to an end, in time to be published in the wonderful Rothmans Football Yearbook of 1974-75. Review of the season, Part 1. Where Leeds United have been concerned, the race for the First Division Championship has sometimes seemed like the fabled contest between the tortoise and the hare. As often as Don Revie's side have fled the blocks in a seemingly invincible sprint, they have been caught and overtaken at the end of the race by more durable, if less distracted opponents. Cynics could be forgiven during the latter weeks of 73-74 for sensing the forming of a similar pattern. For between February 23rd and March the 30th, Leeds United were beaten 4 times, a remarkable statistic in the light of their consistent form over 10 First Division years, and particularly odd because until that February afternoon at Stoke's Victoria Ground, they had not lost a league game all season. It had been a start almost without precedent. After 20 games, they were still unbeaten and had achieved the best post-war beginning to a Division 1 season. When they met Stoke, they had extended that impressive statistic to 29 matches. 9 points ahead of Liverpool, the competition for the championship was surely at an end. Yet, that trophy has been a mirage of the most teasing kind for the Ellen Road Club. Never less than 4th in 9 previous seasons, only once had they been victorious. Throughout March, the neurosis of that past began to show. A defeat at Anfield had double significance as Liverpool efficiently started to close the gap. Leeds' staggering 4-1 home beating by out-of-touch Burnley added to the slide, while another loss at struggling West Ham pushed them to the brink. That they never toppled over reflects tremendous credit on the maturity of players who had begun the season with an extra burden upon them. Leeds were on trust from the Football Association because of 2 years of indiscipline on the field. An appalling record of bookings and sendings off had been answered by the threat of a fine of £3,000, which would be implemented if their conduct failed to improve. Thus, their league championship success sealed in the week before the last Saturday of the season, when Liverpool lost at home to Arsenal, had a double flavour of satisfaction. The real threat of another last-moment failure had been thrust aside, and in the main, the undoubted quality of Leeds' play had lost its cynicism without losing its effectiveness. Leeds undoubtedly enjoyed a rare singleness of purpose which followed an early exit from Europe and a sensational cup defeat by Bristol City. In the final analysis, it was Liverpool, eventual FA Cup winners, who suffered the distractions. But the Yorkshire club had their own handicaps in a series of injuries, which robbed them of the motivating skills of Giles, the drive of Jones, and the electric if enigmatic Eddie Gray for long periods. In the new climate, McQueen and Jordan flourished, while David Harvey threw off for all time the challenge of Gary Sprake. While Liverpool spent much of the year out of arm's reach, they nevertheless held second place with much of the certainty with which Leeds led. Though they never found goal-scoring easy, such was the certainty of their defence that one shot often ensured 2 points. Even when serious injuries robbed the back four of Lawler and Lloyd, none of the cement was missing in the reconstruction. Hughes and young Thompson sealed the centre of the defence, while Tommy Smith, relieved of the captaincy and apparently on his way to another club after an altercation with Bill Shankly, produced revelationary form in a revised role at right back. Among the few clubs not tainted by the threat of relegation in the new world of 3 down were Derby County, who overcame the internal explosion generated by the departure of Brian Clough, and Ipswich, for whom Bobby Robson continued to produce starlets from his own kindergarten. Promoted Queen's Park Rangers and Burnley both spent almost all of the season in the top half of the table, and Rangers in particular unveiled a side of character, cheek and an astonishing ability to combine both qualities in creating a succession of goals from free kicks. But elsewhere, the spectre of second division football hovered. Just 4 Saturdays from the end of the season, 10 clubs were in serious danger of going down. Threatened West Ham produced an unbeaten run through January into March that in previous years would have guaranteed salvation, but only became technically safe with their last game. Stoke, too, down among the early strugglers, showed great form around Christmas with a burst of 11 games without defeat and yet still remained in the mire. Only another fine end-of-season show of consistency hauled them to safety and eventually 5th place. At the end of the dogfight, Southampton became the first club to suffer under the new ruling, but their plight was eclipsed by the demise of Manchester United. Conceding barely more than a goal a game, United's failure lay in the area that had for so long been their strength. They knew they would be without the goals of Law and Charlton for the first time in a decade, but not the crippling and permanent loss of Ian Moore with an incurable ankle injury. George Best, back once more from retirement, was but a shadow of his former self, and on New Year's Day he made what surely was his last appearance in a United shirt. Tommy Docherty could not muster enough goals from either promising youngsters or expensive Scots to avoid the drop. McIlroy topped the league scoring list with just 6 goals. And the dearth of attacking power was never more evident than in goalkeeper Alex Stepney's heading of that chart for several weeks, with but 2 penalties to his name. If United's downfall had all the sadness that inevitably surrounds the dereliction of a stately home, the immediate end came in circumstances that were both shameful and ironic. The irony occurred when a sad-faced Dennis Law backheeled the goal which finally put United down, and it heralded disgraceful behaviour from a contingent of their supporters. Invading the pitch, they succeeded in their intention of having the game abandoned, their futile act only inflicting wounds on a reputation already beginning to tarnish. Southampton and Norwich City, successful in their brinkmanship a year earlier, were both relegated under new managers, Laurie McMenemy and John Bond. Much of Southampton's stay in the First Division had been guaranteed by forwards of the calibre of Davies, Chivers and Shannon, scoring more goals than a succession of leaky defences conceded. McMenemy's faith in attack again only papered over the cracks at the back. His outlay of £175,000 on Peter Osgood epitomised his philosophy, but neither the uneasy ex-Chelsea forward or the more informed Shannon could fashion enough goals to avoid the drop. This left Birmingham, who began the season with 12 games without a win, as the more dramatic of the escapists. 6 points from their last 4 games tugged them above Southampton, vindicating the gamble of manager Freddie Goodwin, who sold Bob Latchford to Everton in a complicated £350,000 deal which brought Kendall and Styles and spending money to St Andrews in his place. But Birmingham City would survive the drop by 1 single point.
Lee, interesting. Very interesting.